You see, I had this struggle in my life. And, on the one side, I was sensing the joy and experiencing that. And yet on the other side, I just look at my life right then and go, God, you know what? Some things in my life don't make sense. And I had heard stories, like many of you, I've heard stories all of my life about believers overseas. I'd hear about the believers in the underground church in China. I'd hear about all these conversions and people in India that were giving their lives to the Lord and just giving everything up. I'd always heard of these stories, and I'd hear about these guys that no one really knows about, but somehow they've led millions, like literal millions of people to the Lord. Like somehow through their discipleship, through their sharing, through these networks, it's to the point of millions. Oh man, I hear these stories of these guys who it seems like their lives match up to the scriptures. And I'm looking at my life and I'm going, gosh, I don't know that mine does. In fact, I know in some areas it doesn't. And so that's why a few months ago, I just said, you know what? I've heard these stories all my life. I got to meet some of these people. I just want to see, is this for real? Because sometimes you hear something is so great, like a movie, then you go and watch it and you go, that was dumb, And I just want to know, is this thing for real? I've heard about the people in India. I've heard about these underground. Let me find out, is it for real? And so please let me say this too. Because some of you guys know, I left my church a while back because I just believed God was leading me on this journey. And since that happened, people say, wow, Francis, that's awesome, man. You pulled your family out and you guys went overseas and you went on this adventure. Man, you're such a godly man for doing that. And I just want to dispel any rumors and make sure you understand it's not because I was godly that I went overseas. In fact, it's quite the opposite. It's because I was ungodly that I went overseas. It's because I looked at my life and I go, man, right now at that point I'm lacking the boldness. I don't think I have the guts to say everything that God wants me to say. I don't think I have the guts, to be rejected. And so I want to go meet some people who do have the guts to do it, and I want to learn from them. So don't get any thought in your mind of, oh, what a holy spiritual guy up there. He went over there and he helped the people around the world. No, it was the exact opposite. I was so weak and I saw this ungodliness in my life, and I go, man, I want to go and I just want to learn. Man, many of us who've been on mission trips, maybe we had that mindset, I'm going to help, I'm going to help, I'm going to help. You get there and you realize, wow, I have a lot to learn from these people. And when I was in India, I had the experience of preaching to a group about this size, and they were the persecuted church. Many of them had lost family members. They've seen family members beat to death and everything else. And so I'm just going, man, I don't even know what to say to you guys. I don't know why I'm on the stage. Talk to me. I want to hear your stories. And I started talking to some of these people. There in India, I was interviewing this lady who's holding this, her little baby, and she was breastfeeding, so it's kind of, okay, I'm asking her, just questions about persecution, and she starts telling me the story. She told me about how she came to the Lord, and because she became a Christian, her whole village comes to her little hut. Here's this pregnant woman, her husband, their whole village comes, and they come with lizards that they had cut the heads off of and said, you need to drink this blood because that's how you convert back to Hinduism. And saying, you need to drink this blood, otherwise you know what happens. Deny Jesus Christ. She's telling me this story, and she said, I can't do it. And she goes, you know what that means, right? And she just grabbed her Bible, and she and her husband just ran. She said, I just grabbed my Bible and we just started running, because the whole village rejected us. And she talked about being out in the jungle. She goes, just my husband and I gave birth out there, and my husband, is holding this baby. It's our first child. We don't know what to do. We're just looking for food. We're looking for any way to feed the baby, any way to feed me. And obviously somehow God sustained them. I talked to another woman, same situation. But they just looked at me and they go, we were not going to deny this. And she goes, I just held on to this book. I would not let them take my Bible from me. And I just ran. And I thought, wow, that's That's a manner that's worthy. That sounds like someone who understands that, you know what, he's really the only one that matters. You know, I talked to guys who talked about, you know, this guy was showing me his scars on his head, on his back, and just told me after a few months of becoming a believer, just surrounded by these people and just saying, okay, God, this is it. This is it. This is the way it ends, but I'm not going to deny. And he just talks about getting beaten and somehow just being able to crawl away and seeing his friend. He goes, man, and I saw my friend. They beat him to death. They killed him. And this all a few months after becoming a believer. I thought, man, this is hardcore. And I asked one of the leaders, I go, it's weird. Like, I go, aren't there people who just call themselves Christians here? I mean, that's everywhere, right? You just call yourself a Christian, but you don't really live it. And he goes, that doesn't make sense out here. He says, why would you just call yourself a Christian? When you call yourself a Christian, you lose everything. So why would you just call yourself that? We only do it if we're serious. And this other guy was telling me about how he was 11. He was 11 years old when he gave his life to Jesus Christ. And his family, he goes, I still remember coming home and telling my dad it was pouring down rain outside. He threw everything I had out into the mud. He looked at me and says, don't you ever call me dad again. And at 11 years old, he goes, man, what did he pick up? His Bible out of the mud. And just a few items of clothes. He goes, I didn't know where do you go when you're 11? And just wandering around, but he just talked about God's provision and God's graciousness. And here he was, a pastor, married, his own family. Here it was later on in life, and he's reconciled with his dad. And his dad now has become a believer, you know, like 20 years later. You know, amazing, amazing stuff. And you talk about being encouraged, because I'm going, man, okay, that makes sense. If you believe all of this, yeah, and you live that life, I go, man, you're living life in a manner that's worthy of the gospel of Jesus Christ. So powerful. Then we went to Thailand. And in Thailand, that was our favorite as a family. We just loved being there. And we just stayed in this orphanage type place, like this land that was bought for these kids who had been rescued out of slavery, you know, that were going to be sold into sex slavery or whatever else. I mean, all these different backgrounds. And every morning, you know, me and my family were just waking up and serving the kids, hanging out with them, just laughing with them. And then at night, we would have these worship times in this little hut. And we would see these kids. I don't know, in this place there's maybe 40, 50 of these little kids. And they just got their hands in the air and they're screaming at the top of their lungs, just worshiping. And I don't know what in the world they're singing. I think it was Christian. You know, they're just, you know, just screaming all of this. But, you know, the guitar player was yeah, it just, you know, it wasn't, you know, I always, forget it. Okay, he just wasn't very good. And pitch, everything, just awful. But no one cared. No one, that stuff doesn't matter to them. They'd been rescued. And to see their faces, I mean, we're holding these kids and we're just looking at them, just screaming to God. And I'm going, man, they get it. And my whole family, we're just all in tears as we're trying to worship with these kids, because we're going, gosh, that's got to be so beautiful in the ears of the Lord. You know, the sound of these kids singing, screaming at God. And going, okay, that makes sense. I think they know that they've been rescued. So then we go to China. Okay, this is the last one, and I won't say anymore. Then I go to China, because I'd always heard about the underground church. And we went to an underground church training place. That was for people your age. They were 18 to 25, and they wanted to be missionaries. They were the ones that were actually leaving China to go to the Middle East and to go other places. And so I'm talking to them, and I'm going, you guys, I don't even know what to say to you. You know, I'm listening to them pray, listening to them sing. I'm going, man, I love it. I'm so fired up right now. You guys have got me so fired up. And I said, can you guys just tell me stories of some of the persecution you've been through? I mean, because wouldn't you want to hear some stories? And they just looked at me all confused. I'm like, well, I hear you guys go through a lot of persecution. And they just kind of were like, well, yeah, of course. I mean, doesn't everyone? And I go, no, you know. And they go, well, but Jesus said that if they hate me, they're going to hate you also. If they persecuted me, they're going to persecute you also. And they go, this is just a part of life. I go, well, can you give me some examples? And they're like, well, you're being vague. I go, okay, just tell me the last time you got persecuted. And they so one girl goes up and she starts telling the story. She goes, yeah, there was a group of us and some government officials came. And so we all just hid and, they got a couple of my friends. And there was these two little boards and this really skinny girl. And she goes, man, it's the first time in my life I was just thanking God I was so skinny because I could slip through this, and all the kids are laughing. And she goes, I'm just shaking, thinking, okay, God, I hope they don't see my backpack. I hope they don't see my name. I hope they don't find anything. I'm thinking, wow, that's so intense. And she could just hear them walking below her and just trying not to breathe and just telling. And she's just saying, it was so cool, though. She just kept thinking, this is it. This is the way it's supposed to be. Another guy gets up and he talks about how same thing happened. These government officials come, and then he says, but we thought, man, there's only 3 of them and there's 14 of us, so we just screamed, run. And so we, and he's telling the story and everyone's just laughing. He goes, and so we start running. He goes, and they start shooting. They start firing bullets, but we knew they were bluffing. They fired in the air, and we were taught in our training, never stop running. So we just all kept running, and he's just laughing. He goes, man, and I was just running thinking, God, this is so cool. This is so cool. And I'm listening to these guys. You guys would have loved them. I wish I could have recorded it, but then, it's kind of illegal, and we would all have been killed, But it's just, it was just the joy. The joy. And you see, I expected some of the devotion. I expected the passion, but they were so happy, like we would just hang out with them and laugh and everything else. But they kept questioning me. They go, wait a second, why is it so strange? Why do you want to hear these stories? And I go, okay, where I come from, things are different. I go, where I come from, do you understand that we have these buildings called churches? And we have a bunch of them, and you kind of choose which one you attend. And I said, and this was the weirdest thing. I said, see, so some people they might even attend one, and then they realize, well, the music is better here, and they'll switch. And these students start laughing hysterically. I mean, I don't know if this ever happened to anyone else that's been speaking and you didn't mean to be funny, but everyone laughs, so you just go with it and go, yeah, I'm funny. It was one of those moments where I seriously was not trying to make anyone laugh. I'm going, it's just kind of a weird thing, like we'll switch, if the child care is better here, then parents will switch to that church. And they start laughing. Hysterically at everything. I go, no, if service times are better, if the speaker is better, and they're laughing, oh, you will make us laugh, and I'm just like, no, I'm not trying. I'm not. This is just, and it was the weirdest thing. It was the weirdest reaction. I even asked my daughter, because she was there with me, I go, was that freaky or what? I mean, they were laughing. It was like I was doing this comedy routine when I'm just going, no, that's just the way we do things here. But as they laughed, I just thought, wow, you're right. That doesn't really make sense, does it? It doesn't make sense. And I look at their life, I go, your lives make sense. And then I start thinking, man, India, there's over 1 billion people there. China, there's over 1 billion people there. Just those 2 countries, man, that makes up about 40% of the Earth's population. The U.S. makes up about 4.6% of the Earth's population. See, we'll listen to stories and go, man, that's weird. Ooh, they're strange over there. No, we're the strange ones. In fact, some of them laugh and go, man, that's so weird. Like it's all consumer driven. Like you'll just sing songs for a certain while. Give me a better one. Give me a better beat. And we just consume. Oh, this church isn't quite meeting up my expectations. They're just looking at scripture and going, how in the world does that match up to making disciples? And as I listened to them, I just thought, man, you know what? You're right. I mean, and some of this is laughable, the way we do some of these things. But I got so excited to come here. I really did. Because I think more and more of us are aware of that, right? Don't you just look at certain things in your life and go, that doesn't make sense, right? You look at certain things and you go, man, I'm looking at this and I believe in hell. Why would I be living this way? I believe in Matthew 25. Why am I spending all my money on myself? We're starting to question and ask these things. And I look at this generation, even as we were worshiping, I'm there on my knees, begging that holy God. I go, God, I want to be a part of a generation. I want to be a part. I don't want to do this by myself. I really don't. I will. I came back with just more of this. No, I'm going to do it. I'm going to live this way. I don't care. I'll do it. And I'm saying, God, I will. I'll be alone, because I've seen people in Scripture who were alone, but I don't want to be alone. And I'm looking at them and go, God, could you just raise us all up? Make a whole new generation that sees the foolishness in a consumer-driven church that says, no, this was about us suffering for the sake of Christ, making disciples ourselves, not just hoping that our pastor would lead them to the Lord and our pastor would disciple them, but that the command was to all of us. Well, God, could you just raise up an army, here in the U.S.? I don't want to just hear stories about what happens over there. I want to be part of a new generation. Please, God, for your name, for your glory's sake, would you just show the world a group of people who are committed?